All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Arun. I'm a solutions engineer at SciNote, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Alenka, who's our senior product manager. And today we're excited to present to you one of our latest features, the storage locations enhancement to our inventory module. And we'll quickly just review the agenda for the webinar today. We'll be discussing, the purpose behind why we built this feature, some of the challenges that we heard from our customers, and we'll also go over some best practices on how you can set up their storage locations in SciNote moving forward. And then we'll dive into some actual use cases that we've built out in SciNote using this feature. And of course, at the end, we'll be leaving some time for all of you to ask questions. Feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A section in the Zoom panel to ask your questions, and we'll be addressing them at the end of the webinar. Right, over to you, Alenka.
Okay, thank you, and welcome from my side too. I would like to start basically with a bit of introduction. I'll basically explain a bit why our inventories were lacking the feature that we just released. So some of you that are already using SciNote already know that our inventories already offer a variety of features that support managing lab materials, equipment, and other type of resources or records that are where inventories come in handy with the structured data keeping. Just to name a few, you can build a database of the before mentioned resources. We call them in SciNote's inventory items. When you need to keep track of all related information at one place. You can also link those items to the work that you do, to SciNote tasks, which helps you keep the traceability of used materials. You can also record the stock consumption on tasks, which also allows you to keep track of the materials usage and restock them in time. Besides that, you can also set date reminders, for example, for instrument calibration and maintenance. You can reference any inventory item or other objects within SciNote elsewhere. And it's also possible to create item label templates and printing them with one of the supported label printers, either Fluix or Zebra printers, which also helps keeping the lab inventory nicely organized. But even though there are a lot of features in the inventory, there was still part of it that was lacking. And based on the feedback that we received from you, our users, we tried to support this part of SciNote with this new feature. So based on the feedback, we then identified which next main points needed improvement within the inventory management in SciNote. And our users wanted an easy way to keep track of what the lab has and where is it located. They also needed a visual representation of sample boxes, which helps quickly identify the empty spots where the samples could be placed. And also we identified there are multiple storage structures appearing in practice. So we wanted to create a feature that supports as many as possible of them. And also we know that samples can be moved around, so there need to be an easy way to move samples around either between boxes or between different locations. And of course, with all that, we wanted to support also shared storage spaces within our platform. And the main goal within this is, of course, keep the labs organized, the resources well maintained, and still support the flexibility and ease of sample management that is needed within an inventory. And this basically then resulted in the new feature called inventory storage locations. I'll now jump to SciNote and quickly show you where do you find it. So if you're starting in a dashboard, let's say when you sign in, you simply navigate to the inventories, and the inventory section is now divided between two parts. So it has the items where your existing inventories are now living, and the new part is called locations, And here you will find your landing page where you can create locations. I won't go much deeper now because we will be covering a lot of the behavior of inventory locations when we will be presenting use cases. And also Arun will talk a bit about how to kick off and start with this feature if you're trying to or wanting to transition your storage management in SciNote. Arun, I think you can now continue with your part.
Perfect. All right. Can we jump to the next slide? Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about how you should approach setting up your storage locations in SciNote. And these are just some best practices that you can take into account as you're trialing this feature or using this feature down the road. So initially, we do recommend that you start by identifying ownership and the access permissions for these storage locations and inventories in general. And the reason for this is because in SciNote, if you are using multiple teams, you will want to establish which team is going to own the inventory associated with each storage location. And once you decide which team is owning it, then you'll want to identify which teams you're sharing this inventory and storage locations with. And then also set the appropriate permissions depending on if you want the other teams to be able to just view the inventory and locations or actually make some edits to the data in the stored locations or inventory. And then it's always nice to assign the responsible individuals that are going to be managing this locations or inventory data moving forward. And this is also important just because the permissions do differ on a team level when it comes to who's able to create new inventories and create new storage locations. And then we're going to talk about actually setting up the storage locations in SciNote. So the first thing is you'll want to do a basic inventory assessment so list out all the possible storage areas or storage types that you have. So this could be physical storage locations such as buildings, which lab, which room, which freezer, which cabinet, shelf, box, etc. Now, once you have this comprehensive list, this is going to be your foundation on which you're going to build your digital storage location in SciNote. So once you have the assessment and you have a list of all your possible locations, we're then going to begin mapping the storage structure effectively. So for this, you'll want to start by planning a hierarchical structure that mirrors your physical setup. So you would look at the largest storage unit that you want to capture in SciNote and then build from there down to the smallest. But while mapping this, I actually recommend starting with a bottom-up approach. So you'll want to identify the most granular location you want to track. So as an example, if you have boxes where, say, you're storing sample vials, then the most granular location will be the position of that vial in the box. So which row and which position. So once you've identified this, you can build on top of it. So you'll know that the specific grid location is going to be in a box. The box is going to be in a shelf, the shelf in a freezer, the freezer in a room, and the room in a building. And one important thing to remember is the locations are quite flexible in how you use them. So you can edit them, delete them, move things around in case your lab's needs change over time. So it's quite adaptable depending on your use case. And then we just have a quick visual on how this bottom-up approach looks like. So here I've initially identified the box position as the most granular location I want to track. So once we have the box, then we know that the box or boxes are going to go in a shelf, and then the shelf is going to be in a freezer, specifically the -20 freezer, and then the freezer is located in lab 1. So once you've mapped this out visually, then you can go into SciNote and you can build this out starting by creating the location for the lab. You open the lab location, create the sublocation for a freezer, and then open the freezer, create the sublocation for a shelf, and then open the shelf and create your boxes within the shelf. And then within the boxes, you'll be able to select a gridded box or a box without grids. And this is something we'll look at when we explore the use cases in a few minutes. And the last thing I wanted to quickly touch on is the difference between creating a new location in SciNote versus creating a new box. So the locations allow you to create multiple layers of hierarchy for locations in SciNote, whereas if you were to create a new box, the box is actually where you would specifically assign the items as to where they're located. And here you can see the box allows you to have a box with a grid where you can define the dimensions of the grid. Or if you're, say, capturing reagents or instrument locations, you wouldn't necessarily need a grid. So you can have a box without a grid and just log the items that are captured in that general location. Alenka, you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll take over now and start with our first use case. And for this, I'll transition back to SciNote and the locations. So for the first use case, I'd like to present one example when users are storing cells and tissue samples in liquid nitrogen. Before we dive into the first use case, I would actually want to highlight that using an internal naming system for locations is a good approach also to use this within SciNote, and it's a widely accepted good laboratory practice for managing storage spaces. So if your team already follows a system, you can simply apply it when setting the locations in SciNote. And if you don't have one yet, it's maybe worth discussing with your teammates if this is something you would benefit from. And for the example that I want to start with, as I mentioned, you might have a dedicated room that is having all your liquid nitrogen storage containers inside. I named my room B5 ventilated room with dewars. I have 2 dewar containers in here. And this is the location level where you would simply list all the containers that you're having. And if I open one of my containers, I created here a list of racks that are inside this container. If I open, then the next level here would be opening this rack that lists all the boxes that are present within this rack. I have here 2 examples. So, for example, one can hold only CHO cells. I already have some listed in here. And in this case, I utilized a grid box of a predefined structure, and I placed items on various positions depending on where I actually store them. In this case, for example, you could utilize also a description field for notifying your coworkers with, for example, some safety measures or information that might be handy to keep next to the location. You can even add the person who is responsible for maintaining a particular container and so on. The next use case I would like to present is example with the freezers. So if you're storing items in freezers, you can use the same approach basically as I presented just before. Again, I first started with creating a room dedicated just for the freezers. And the next level would be basically listing all of the individual freezers that are located in this room. After that, I also attached an image in this case, for example. After that, each freezer then has, of course, multiple racks. I created one -80 freezer that currently has 4 racks. And in my case, each rack again holds multiple boxes. This one is dedicated only for DNA, vectors, and my E. coli samples. And the DNA sample box is again a box with a grid, which has some samples inside. And for example, I have here one sample that is already running low, and I set the low stock reminder for this case. And I'm able, and this was set within the inventories, and I'm able to see it also here in the box location. This basically helps you keep up with the important notifications for your items if you set them up. And practical thing that you can do in case of your freezers is if each of your freezers or the freezer has multiple racks that have actually the same structure, you can simply create one of the rack structures down by the end, so the lowest level of boxes, and then simply go one level up or two levels up back and duplicate the created rack. And you will create all the, basically this will create the same structure of the location that you're having already created. It only won't assign the items that are already assigned to the box position. So basically this will help you save some time when creating your racks that have actually the same structure. I would then just go and rename it to update the name of the rack to actually to save it as a new one, let's say. Okay. Then I have one more use case where I would invite Arun to explain it a bit more in depth.
Yeah, so the use case, the last or the third use case we'll go over is one related to managing locations of your instruments or equipment. So here we just created a generic location called equipment management. And then here we have two sublocations split based on department and the type of work they're doing. So we have one for R&D and one for systems integration. The reason it's split this way is because the R&D data is used for pure research, whereas the systems integration is doing actual verification, validation work. So the data there is a lot more controlled from a compliance standpoint. And so now, Alenka, if you can just open the R&D department, we'll see within the R&D department, we have two labs. We've got an assay development lab and then an assay automation lab that's taking the assay that's been developed and automating it using a liquid handler. So here, Alenka, we can open maybe, the automation lab, and we can see which instruments the automation lab has. So we've got a tape station for DNA quantification. We've got a real-time PCR. We've got two liquid handlers here. And any reminders associated to these instruments. So maybe in the inventory, you're tracking the calibration date or maintenance date that's coming due. Those reminders will also appear here in the storage location area for you to quickly review and take any necessary action on. And yes, the item card. So you can click on the name of any item and it brings up the item card for that particular item, which contains all the information about that item that you've captured in the inventory. So this will display all the different columns and the data captured in each column.
Okay. Yeah, and the fourth example that we wanted to present is actually covering one of our more, let's say, generic use case, which is when you're, for example, when you want to also track where your chemicals are stored within the lab. So I created, in this case, a room for storing chemicals. It might be even within the lab, so you can also then just simply, I would be then moving this within a lab if I created it as a location within SciNote locations. And here I actually created two cabinets. One is for chemicals and the other one is dedicated just for nanoparticles in this case. And the cabinet for chemicals already includes a few shelves, and I utilized the simple approach that I also I'm familiar with from my work from the lab. So we typically ordered all of our chemicals based on alphabetically. And in this case, I would actually go and create each of the shelves within this cabinet as a box already. And I would utilize, again, a no-grid box for this case And because, of course, chemicals were never really put on a specific position within a shelf, but only somewhere on the shelf. And in this case, I also, yeah, as I mentioned, utilize the no-grid box, which allows me basically to still track where the chemical bottles or boxes are stored, but I don't need any specific position. And as Arun mentioned, yeah, all the item information that I'm keeping in my inventory are easily accessible via item card. Item card also got a new section. It's called locations, and here is also visible where this item is located. So if it would be, for example, located in multiple places, all the locations would be all listed in this section within the item card. I would also point out that it's possible to assign a new location to the item. I would simply go and select another location in this case. Okay, I selected the same box, so it already exists. And I can also unassign the item from the location directly from the item card. So this is also handy when you're managing your items from the inventory, not necessarily just from the locations part within SciNote. So you can simply update all the relevant information related to the storage locations directly from the inventory too. Yeah, and this would be our last example. I'll jump back to the presentation because I would like to share a bit about the use case, or actually in practice, a lot of our customers might be dealing with multiple samples at once. And to support these kind of use cases well enough, we also implemented the ability to import items to a box. And I would like to explain a bit how to deal with these cases. For example, if you're already having some samples within your inventories and just want to properly position them and locate them to your boxes or to locations that you're creating, or how to start when you have a new set of samples that are not yet in your inventory. So for a successful import to a box, you'll need to collect SciNote item IDs from SciNote, and optionally also item names. And to get item IDs from inventory, for the existing items, you would basically start within your inventory. You can filter out the relevant subset of your items and export them. And the export file will contain all item data, including their IDs that you will then need for importing to a box. In case you're having a completely new set of items, you would first need to add them to your inventory within SciNote so that they get assigned system IDs. Once you have those item IDs and names, you then navigate to the desired location and import them into a box. And within the import items to a box window, you'll find an option. I'll just quickly jump back to SciNote. You'll find an option to export the current box. And this comes very handy because this actually downloads a template that ensures the correct file structure for importing items into the box positions. So in this case, I have a no-grid box. This maybe isn't so relevant, but when you're having a grid box, let me just jump to one grid box example. Let's go here. It may be very important to know which positions are already taken and which ones are not. And this will be already indicated in the exported file if you export the current box template. So with this, you get an overview which positions are actually already full, which are still empty, and you can simply place the new items that you want to put in this box to the sheet, to the file listing, stating the item IDs and names, and import this file back to SciNote. Okay. I think I covered all the details related to importing and exporting items. And I think if there's nothing more that you would want to add, Arun, we can actually go to the Q&A.
Yeah, we actually do have a couple of questions, so I think we'll jump straight into the Q&A. The first question we have is, how easy is it to search for items in locations? If I look for a certain antibody, will it pull up where in the lab it is stored, or just the item record itself?
I can maybe
Alenka,
answer this one.
yeah.
As we maybe already mentioned during the presentation, so the easiest way, if you know which item you're looking for, I would simply go to the inventory, search for that item, and then check out the location listed on the item card. That would be the easiest way to retrieve the item information if you know which item you want to find, basically.
Awesome. The next question we have is, if we start with the free trial, will all of our data stay or be deleted after the 30-day free trial period?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we don't delete any of the data, even if you create it during the trial phase. So all the data will remain, even if you don't decide to purchase this add-on for yourself or for your team. So it's kept there. It's only in the, let's say, view mode. So it's read-only state. You can't edit it anymore when the trial is over.
And Alenka, this information is also retained in the audit trail, correct? Even after the free trial period?
That is correct, yeah.
Excellent. And then we actually have a two-part question next. Do we have a chain of custody on the samples? And is it possible to make aliquots, and does the system have a genealogy to trace the parent-child relationship? So this is the parent-child or item relationships is a slightly different feature. As much as we'd love to dive into this feature today, rather please feel free to reach out to your customer success manager or SciNote support, and we can schedule a meeting to go over the item relationship feature specifically. But on the first question, Alenka, do you have any thoughts? Do we have a chain of custody on the samples?
I'm actually, I have a follow-up question. Chain of custody represents what in this case? So this means the history of the locations that were where the item was appearing previously, or
that's how I understood it as well.
Yeah. So basically, this would be the easiest to retrieve from the audit trails. So audit trails are, of course, audit trails and activity records. So activity records is also one part of SciNote where all the updates in the location side or in the inventory item side would be tracked. And location changes for items are actually also visible there. So you can filter out all the activities related to a specific either location, either sample, and check out the basically past behavior or past records there.
Great. Radha, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't and you need more information, please do reach out to our support or your customer success manager, and we can go into this in more detail. And the next question we have is, can you import from item inventory to locations inventory? So I'm assuming this is if they're storing the location data in the item inventory, can they import it to the locations inventory?
Yeah, it could be a question related to this. So in this case, a very brief answer would be that you would basically take a look, how did you structure your location information within the inventory, and then figure out the structure of it and try to recreate it within the locations, and then simply collect the items that are stored in those locations and import them to the location box. That's one way to do it. But of course, it depends very much on the approach that you have taken when you created the inventory item, the inventories. So also, a good answer here is to reach out to our CSMs or to your CSM and take a look together with them and figure out how would be the easiest way for your use case to basically transition from inventory columns, tracking locations to the SciNote location feature.
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where we'd actually need to see how you have it set up currently in order to recommend the best approach in terms of moving this information to the storage locations in SciNote.
Correct.
And the next question we have is, can bulk items be easily transferred between locations, or do we have to go item by item? Say, for example, we reorganize the lab and box 1 on rack 5 is now on rack 7, or freezer 2 has to be defrosted and everything else is moved somewhere else. So I guess, Alenka, the question is, can we select a list of items that are in one location and bulk move them to a new location, or does it have to be reassigned one by one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, we're covering this with, let's say, 2 examples. So you can, of course, move item per item to a different location, either within the same box or to a completely different box, or even move the whole box of items, or even whole rack, or a complete fridge, if that's the case, to another location. So basically, moving locations and moving items is possible also already within this feature. So I think we with this covered majority of cases. So either having just one item to be relocated, or the whole box, or multiple boxes.
Alenka, since we do have some time, would it be okay if we shared the screen and just showed maybe moving a box or a location quickly, since I think a few other users could also benefit from this?
That's true. Okay, I'll then just simply go to this what I have already opened. So to move the whole box, I would simply select the box that I want to move, click move, and then I would go and select the other container or location where I want to move this box. So in this case, I just wanted it to be transitioned to another diver. And let's check how it looks now. So since I didn't have in this diver container any other racks, I basically placed it directly within this small diver container. The other case, so for simply moving items, I would select one item, and by selecting it, I can go and unassign it from this location or move it to another location. In here, I would again need to go selecting which box I want to put it, and I decided to place it into a completely different box in a different container than it is currently. So let's say I want to move it back to a container where it was before, and I want to select the box where I want to move, and it indicates already the first empty position for me, and this is A1 in this case. And let's say that I'm satisfied with this, and I'll simply click move, and this item will be removed from this box and moved to the new selected box. And moving location levels can be done basically on any level. So I can even select one of the main location levels that I created or I started with, and move it to another location, maybe a completely new room, or I don't know why. Let's say that I'm moving this freezer's room, which doesn't maybe make sense much now, but let's say I'm moving it to R&D department, and I'll have it there for now. So moving, it's currently working like this.
Super.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Alenka. I think that was very clear and helpful in terms of how the moving works.
Thanks.
The next question we have is, I noticed that each item information contains a QR code. How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can explain that also briefly. So the default QR code that is created by system on the item card actually encodes the item ID, the system item ID that is assigned by SciNote when the item gets created. So for example, if you would be scanning or printing out that QR code and, I don't know, putting it on the as a label on the item container or tube, scanning it with a QR code scanner or code scanner. So it should work with probably any kind of scanner that is able to scan QR codes, barcodes, and then kind of codes. You can position, I will actually showcase this. I don't have a scanner in place, but I'll maybe just go to one of my inventories and show one of the examples how to do that. So if I would be having a scanner, I could go into my inventory. Okay, I opened the largest inventory probably that I have, and now it froze. Are you still seeing a presentation or, okay. Or is it SciNote?
Yeah, we see it now.
Okay, great.
We see SciNote now with the inventory open.
Great. You can utilize this search with barcode field, or it should work also within search in search items, so regular search field. So if you're placed in here, I would simply click inside to activate this field and then go and scan the code, the QR code from the sample that you're having, and it will filter out the item that you scanned from the inventory. So that's one of the approaches how to utilize these QR codes that are appearing in these item cards. These are the system generated ones. If you're using label templates, you can also generate or create the label template that has a different QR code that encodes any other information from the inventory columns. Again, a bit more time would be needed to explain this in depth, so maybe reach out to any of your CSMs to help you out with this if you're having a use case where you would find this practical.
Yeah, please do feel free to reach out to our support or your CSM, and we're happy to go into this in more detail. The next question we have is, how much is the locations add-on? So for this, I would definitely recommend that you reach out to our support or your CSM, and we'll be happy to send you a quote for the locations add-on, depending on the number of users and what type of plan you have, etc. But everyone does get a 30-day free trial of the feature. So if you'd like to use it for 30 days before purchasing it, please feel free to take advantage of that. And moving on to the next question. So this one is again about searching for items. Is it at all possible to search for items within the locations feature, or does it only work in combination with the inventory feature?
So currently, the only place which supports searching for items is the actual box, but we're planning to improve this in the next releases. So currently, if I would be going within the box, opening the search field, here would be the easiest place to start searching for the items that you're having within the box. But one thing that we're considering adding in the future is ability to basically start searching for an item located within your locations you have access to already from basically any level of locations. So this is currently not yet available, but it's planned for the future.
And Alenka, I guess I have a follow-up question to this. So if we wanted to use the global search to find a location, I could just search for the item name, which would take me to the inventory, and from there open the item card and find the location data from the item card, correct?
That is correct. That's also one way how to utilize basically global search for easier access to the items, especially if you, for example, don't know in which inventory this item would appear. So you don't need to search through multiple inventories finding it.
Okay, next question. Since we started using SciNote before the availability of the location feature, we have created an inventory for the different locations of our items. What would be the advantage for us to switch to the location feature versus the status quo?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah. So depending on what you actually wish to achieve with tracking locations. So if you're having a complex location structure where items are constantly or oftentimes moving around, it might be more practical to keep those as within the feature of locations, because it allows you easier relocating stuff than just updating column within the inventory field. One practical use case that could be applied in this case is also when you're sending out some samples to, I don't know, collaborators. You could recreate the structure or create one location for collaborators and moving the items that you send out there. So they basically, in that case, you would, it would maybe more clearly identify where those items are located, except if you are, of course, already having that in an inventory inventory column. I guess the best answer here is that it depends. Majority of things depend on the use case that you're having. So it's maybe for some simplified or small storage spaces, it might not be that practical, but when you're handling a large number of storage spaces and they need to be shared across teams or even combined with shared inventories and access needs to be managed more diligently, storage locations feature would be the way to go.
Yep, I would agree. So if you have very basic location structure, maybe you're just tracking which lab it's located in a separate column in the inventory, then the status quo using that might be easier. Whereas if you're tracking, say, exactly which freezer or which shelf in a freezer a box is located, or which position in the box something's located, in that case, the storage locations feature gives you that visual mapping, which is a huge advantage compared to creating, say, 5 different columns or uploading an Excel file to your inventory and mapping it out there. And then, of course, there's the traceability aspect where if things are moved or things are removed from a particular location, all of that is continuously tracked in SciNote.
That is correct. Well, summarized.
And then we have another question. Can we create new columns at the box level?
Yeah, this is also one of the things that is not yet possible currently. So we currently structured the locations more related to the inventory or item data. So currently the structure is still, let's say, more rigid, but let us know if this is something that would be very beneficial for you, and also share your use case behind this with your CSM, so it will reach product team and we can then figure out what are the next improvements that should be done or added to the storage locations feature.
And then we have another question related to columns. Will locations show up as a column in the item inventory, or will you have to open the item card to see its location?
Yeah, currently the locations are not yet displayed as a column within the inventory. They're currently only visible on the item card. Again, one part that we might be improving in the future. And yeah, waiting for waiting for an improvement here. Definitely a good thought. We thought of that too, but we didn't yet added it.
And Alenka, just to kind of add to this, so this is just our initial release of the storage locations feature, right? We always have improvements planned to this in the future. Well, we will be enriching the feature based on feedback from customers or requests from customers. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. Let us know what you'd like to see, what you don't like, what's challenging, because we take all of this into account when making improvements or additions to our features in SciNote.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm really happy to hear actually that our thoughts with the next phases of this feature align with your questions already now. So that's a good sign.
And then we have a question about the QR codes. Is it possible to generate a QR code associated with the box so that you can scan the code on the box and get an overview of the box? So I guess QR code for the box instead of the individual item itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is currently also not possible within SciNote. Though I would be interested in the use case that Tom, who gave us this question, has. So one of the cases that we identified during the research is, for example, when you're using in the lab racks that are dedicated for the rack scanners, which are typically pre-labeled or have a predefined barcode on them. So this is also one of the things that we discussed about, of adding some time in the future, so that you would actually be able to associate a dedicated field for storing this kind of information or QR code from the purchased rack that is pre-labeled with this within the locations feature. But we are still collecting basically interest in this. So if this is a use case related to this, I'm happy to hear more about this. If not, also happy to hear more to figure out the idea behind this and how can we support this better.
And next question we have is, in case the items inventory is not used for certain items, can items still be added to the location feature, or are they imported from the items inventory?
Mm-hmm. If I'm understanding this question correct, so it goes in the way that can the locations be used instead of inventories? I don't know, Arun, how do you get this question?
So I think I read it as, do we have to create the item in the inventory before we can, or can we add it directly to the storage locations part without creating it in the inventory? And I believe the answer is you have to create it first in the inventory as an item before you can add it to the location portion, because everything is connected with the item IDs that are generated in the inventory.
Yeah, it is confirmed that that's what she had in mind. Great, yeah.
Great, okay. And then the next question we have is, great presentation. Thank you, Pamela. When adding items to a box, when we are importing our inventory as an Excel file, my understanding is that we add the position of the box grid for each item. If so, how does it work for replicate vials? For example, if we have 40 vials of the same construct, do we add the item 40 times to be able to assign them to the box grid? Is there a way we can assign items to a range, such as A1 through D10, or does it have to be done individually?
Okay, I'll maybe just go quickly and export one of the files from the box to display how they actually appear in the downloaded file. So I'll wait for it to finish. So the use case that you mentioned, Pamela, it's the easiest achieved by utilizing the import, as you mentioned. And in this case, this export or downloaded box file would actually come with a column that is representing the box positions already in the box. So this will depend on the predefined box dimensions. And in this case, if I want to place the same item on the multiple locations, I would simply copy paste it or drag and drop the item ID to multiple positions within the box, save this file and import it back. That would be the easiest way. So we are allowing assigning the same item ID to multiple box positions. We know that this is an often use case, especially when you're utilizing or aliquoting samples into multiple vials and having one item within your inventories. So that would be the way to go currently. We are planning in the future to create a bit more interactive grid within SciNote already. So you could be easily, I don't know, dragging or adding one item ID to multiple box position within the grid already. But currently the easiest way to go is with import.
Excellent. Thank you for showing that to us, Alenka. I think that wraps up all the questions. That was a lot of good questions. Thank you, everyone, for those questions. I guess just to wrap things up, once again, thank you so much for your time today. We were very excited to showcase this feature. If you have any additional questions, or if maybe we didn't answer your question as thoroughly as you'd like, please do reach out to your CSM or SciNote support. We're happy to schedule a meeting, go over the feature in more detail. And if you need any pricing information, yes, please do reach out to us, and we'll be happy to send you a quote. With that being said, I think that concludes the webinar. Anything else to add, Alenka, before we close out?
Actually, I don't have anything more to add. I would, again, also, same as Arun, I'm very thankful and for your attention, and I was happy to answer all the questions that you gave. I hope this feature will help you in your lab endeavors that you're having. And if not, or if there is something more that you'd like to see in SciNote, we're always open to hear your feedback. Some of you already know that we try to take it as seriously as possible and also include it within the next updates that we are planning for SciNote. And we'll be happy to do this also in the future.
Alenka, we actually just got a last question that came in. What happens when you unassign an item that has the same item ID? If I understood it correctly, two items can't have the same item ID, correct?
That is true, but the same item ID can be assigned to multiple box positions. So in this case, if I'm unassigning just one item from the box, I would be clearing out only this box position that was previously taken by this item. So the remaining two would, of course, remain populated with the same item ID as before, because we are treating this as some kind of aliquots of the same item that might be in multiple vials, even though they're not multiple item IDs or items within the inventory. I hope I answered
Awesome.
correctly.
All right, well, on that note, I guess, thank you again for your time. We look forward to hearing from you. Any questions, any feedback that you have, please do reach out to us. And with that being said, have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you from all of us at SciNote.
Thank you.